Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I have 1400 Eastern Time, and with that, we'll go ahead and get started. On behalf of the Department of the Air Force Chief Data and AI Office, welcome to the April version of Innovation Connect. My name is Colonel Ryan Kehoe, and I'm the Deputy Chief Data and AI Officer. I'll be your moderator today. The purpose of Innovation Connect is to create a collaborative atmosphere for those working in the DoD to cross-pollinate ideas across organizations, enhance innovation, and identify and solve problems related to research and development and scaling. We're excited to host today's event and thank you all for attending. Before we dive in, though, we'd like to set a few housekeeping rules. If you are not the presenter today, we ask that you please keep your camera off and your microphone on mute. Second, we ask that you keep your questions to the topics presented and refrain from any media-related questions or advertisements for your company or organization. And lastly, we encourage you to submit your questions via the chat function during the presentation, and we will then provide those questions to the presenter during the Q&A session at the end of the brief. So with the ground rules established, it is now my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Ms. Diane Staheli, who serves as the DoD's Chief of Responsible Artificial Intelligence, or Responsible AI, for the DoD Chief Digital and AI Office. Ms. Staheli joined the DoD CDAO from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Lincoln Laboratory, where she led a research group focused on AI assurance and advanced AI research. She has over 20 years of experience in AI, technology development, data analytics, human factors, and cyber operations. Before her current role, she managed programs supporting the intelligence community, U.S. Cyber Command, the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, the Combatant Commands, and the Department of the Air Force. She has also worked at a home networking startup and at a global information security company. She holds a Master's of Art in Software Engineering from Harvard University and a Master of Science in Human Factors from Bentley University. Today, Ms. Staheli, if I apologize, will provide an overview of the DoD Chief Digital and AI Office, and we will then follow that with a fireside chat with our own DAF CDAO, Ms. Eileen Vidrine. Ms. Staheli, we're excited to have you join us today, and the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much for having me today. I'm looking forward to the discussion. If we get my charts up while that's happening, what I wanted to do today was, first of all, just give you a little bit of an overview of what the DoD CDAO is, talk a little bit about my office, what we do, and our journey towards responsible AI, give you a little bit of a flavor of the kind of work that we have going on in my office, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. And please do ask questions. Certainly, that's what I'm here for today. So if we could move to the first chart, please. The DoD Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office is a somewhat newly refactored office. We are rapidly approaching our first year of existence. We were formed in June of last year with a combination of the former Joint Artificial Intelligence Office, the DoD Chief Data Officer, Defense Digital Services, as well as the Advana program. The digital in our name refers to the fact that we are much more broad than data. It incorporates some of the expertise that our Defense Digital Services office provides, with an emphasis on rapid response capability, as well as some of our efforts in cybersecurity. So what we really do, our mission is accelerating the adoption of data analytics and AI across the department, specifically for generating decision advantage from the boardroom to the battlefield. And what that means is that we engage in a number of different activities, ranging from creating policy around the use of AI in the department, breaking down barriers to adoption, building out the infrastructure and services that will help the department to become more capable in AI, being able to conduct experimentation to scale the solutions, and providing these rapid response capabilities in the case of emergent challenges. I've listed out some of our 2022 priorities here. Some of those may change slightly in 2023, but generally speaking, the creation of policy and governance around AI is a major priority for us. Creating enterprise services and capabilities, and as well as enterprise and mission solutions for AI and data analytics is all part of our charter. Next chart, please. So for responsible AI specifically, you can see our commander's intent here, laid out by the Secretary of Defense. Responsible AI is the only kind of AI that we do. So the mission for our team is to make that intent a reality. And the three biggest things that my office is engaged in right now are building capability, driving accountability, and fostering the ecosystem. So when we say building out capability, we don't mean that just in the sense of technological capability, but also capability in terms of building out the expertise of our people and building out the processes across the department that will help us to be responsible, as well as the technological capabilities that will enable both the people and the processes. When we're talking about accountability, we're looking at how do we both measure how responsible we're being, how do we know that our efforts to be responsible are having an impact, and how do we incentivize responsible practices by surfacing the activities that the different organizations are engaged in, and help to drive those efforts forward. And finally, we know that no one ever does this alone, so we're looking at building out the ecosystem both within the DoD as well as the government, the nation, and the world more broadly. So certainly good ideas in this area don't only come from my office or within the department. We want to be able to take advantage of best practices emerging in industry, cutting edge research, as well as drive the responsible AI agenda internationally with our partners and allies. Next chart, please. So our journey towards responsible AI really has been underway for the last 5 years, starting with the formation of the Joint AI Center and the DoD AI strategy in 2018. You can see the first threads towards responsible AI appear there, with the ideas of military ethics and AI safety emerging. In 2019, we proposed the AI ethical principles through the Defense Innovation Board. They conducted a study involving not just DoD representatives, but also industry, civil society, academia more broadly, to identify what the ethical principles we should be adopting, which we did formally adopt in 2020. Our AI education strategy also helped us to think about how do we educate our workforce on those principles. In 2021, we reinforced our commitment to those principles and started to lay out the groundwork for our strategic plan in a memo for the department, which really outlined the 6 big areas that we think needed to be tackled for us to be responsible. And then just last year, we released our responsible AI strategy and implementation pathway, which is our strategic plan and actions for how we're getting after responsible AI in the department. And we'll talk about that more in just a moment. I won't brief all of these in detail for you today, but I did want to make you aware that these are all publicly available on our website at ai.mil. You can look under our resources section, and all of these are available for your consumption and use. Next chart. So the responsible AI strategy and implementation pathway is one of the major efforts that my office is involved with the execution of. Our role is to be the coordinator, synchronizer, and provide general oversight for the implementation. What this document contains is some front matter regarding the philosophy of our approach, which is largely based on the idea of technological maturity. But it outlines 64 different lines of effort, broken down into 6 large areas of activity, which are assigned out to different organizations within the DoD. This ranges from everything from updating policy to defining what our workforce, how our workforce should be structured and how they should be educated, to what our acquisition pathways need to be updated to or what they need to contain, to specifying a number of different tools that should be developed. These are really specific actions aligned to the organizations in DoD that are best suited to carry those out. The executing body for this is the Responsible AI Working Council, which has membership across the services departments and components. Certainly the Air Force has a representative that sits on this council. And we have monthly meetings in which we review progress, share information, collect pain points, identify areas for further work. So this is really the bread and butter for what our department is undertaking as far as responsible AI. Certainly, this is also available if anyone would like to go through and see what those 64 different lines of effort are. You can find that on our website. Next chart, please. So some of the tools that are specified in this document, as well as what some of the things that our office is engaged in building are listed out here. When we're thinking about tools, we're not just thinking about tools for software developers, although certainly those are on the list here, but we're also thinking about what kinds of tools do senior leaders need to have at their disposal? What kinds of tools do responsible AI practitioners need to have? Really, any role within the software development lifecycle should be able to have tools that will help them to be responsible. Some of them may be software or technical tools, for example, data bias detection tools or test and evaluation tools, and we are building some of those out. But these could also be tools to help program managers to help provide checklists to help them think through how to be responsible on their project. It could be tools to share information, for example, use case repository to help acquisition professionals look at what capabilities are already being built, or it could be tools for senior leaders to better understand what activities their organization is engaged in or what their key performance metrics are. So our organization has just finished up the first phase of a study looking at some of these tools that are available in industry and piloting tools that we can bring into the department. And we're expecting to have a release in June, the anniversary of the pathway signing, for a first release of our toolkit that will help map out some of these personas and roles to the kinds of tools and activities, methodologies that they should be engaged in. And really that we're intending for this framework to be composable. We know that every department service has their own development process, their own tools that they're working with, their own organizational culture. And so they may have different tools that they want to bring in. So being able to be composable and flexible and tailorable and still meeting the intent of being responsible is something that we're working hard towards. So that's what I had prepared to talk about today. I'm happy to continue the conversation and dive into any of these topics more specifically, just based on the interest of folks in the group.
Okay, so actually, ma'am, before we go to the Q&A, we were planning to do a fireside chat with Ms. Vidrine. So Ms. Vidrine, I'll turn the floor over to you. Over.
Awesome. Thank you, Colonel K. I'm always grateful when we have amazing leaders like yourself come into the Department of Defense to work with us. And so I'm going to ask, what motivated you to serve as the responsible AI chief role and work in what I would say the AI assurance field?
So certainly it was a field that I had been working in my previous capacity and working as an FFRDC, leading a research group there. I'm actually an IPA assignment, which is a program that the government runs that they can utilize to bring in technical expertise and leadership into the government from industry and academia, where, especially for roles that might be specifically hard to fill or there's sparse expertise in the department already. I had a previous relationship with the former Joint AI Center. I had worked with them since the beginning. I actually worked with them on a study to help define their first set of mission initiatives. So I knew the organization and I knew the people working in it. I knew they were having trouble sourcing this role. So I volunteered to join the government with the hopes that, coming into the government, you have the ability to make greater impact than you do in an FFRDC. As an FFRDC, you can conduct research and you can make technical recommendations, but you can't actually execute on those recommendations. So the ability to have broader impact and to be able to actually do that work in the government, in the government role, was exciting for me.
Well, I know I'm really excited to have your skills and abilities in our on our team, because we need great leaders in this field. And so I'm grateful, because I know that it's a risk, but I also appreciate you highlighting the IPA program, because it's an opportunity for potentially some of our colleagues online to be inside the building on a full-time basis. And we need leaders to come in and drive impact. So thank you very much. I can't emphasize enough how grateful I am.
So thank you so much for those kind words. I will echo your plug for the IPA program, in that it has been a very rewarding experience for me. I've learned a lot in my almost a year now about how the government works, about all the things that I never thought that I would know about as a technologist. I learned a lot about policy. I learned a lot about acquisition. I learned a lot about the legal aspects. It's definitely been a broadening experience for me, which will, in turn help me with my career. So it's something that I will highly recommend, that if anyone is listening from outside the DoD, that they consider it.
It's a true win-win. It is definitely a win-win, and it also helps some of our folks out there to think differently on their next hire, to bring in truly qualified experts in their field at the speed of mission. And that's really, I'm truly grateful. So following on, this is a really important role, being the Chief of Responsible AI for DoD, and you've been here for about a year. What standards and practices has the Chief Digital AI Office in terms of buying and building that trustworthy AI for the DoD, for the military departments, for our services, our allies? If you could share a little bit on those practices, I think that would be great for the folks online today.
Sure. So before I jump into that, I will say that one of the things that I had to do upon first coming into the office, before we even get to standards and practices, was first build up the capability and the team to be able to work on it, right? So I came in when it was mostly me. I had a few very excellent contractors supporting me, but the Responsible AI Working Council, that helped to shape the initial strategy and implementation pathway. We needed to get that group back together. We needed to get them working together. We needed to bring in more RAI experts into CDAO to help us. So there was, and we're still, quite honestly, working through that. So if anyone also wants to come and join CDAO, I will shamelessly say that we're hiring. So please get in touch with me if you're interested. But that's one of the biggest things that I had to do, first of all, was just put it together, the who, before we could get to the what. So with the what, I will say that we're not quite at the point of standards yet. We have made some updates to policy, certainly the pathway itself, as well as the newly updated DoD Directive 3000.09 were two things that we got out in the policy realm over the last year. But before we can get to standards, first we have to work on best practices. So that's really where we've been focusing our energy over the last year. We have been conducting studies with FFRDC partners on the kinds of tools, developing the best practices that we want to implement. The toolkit that I mentioned that we are releasing in June will be that first sort of set of guidance and best practices. It will incorporate guidance that has been put out by other DoD entities so far, including notably DIU and their responsible AI guidelines and checklists that they have released, which have been an enormously helpful resource. It will include mappings to the recently released NIST AI Risk Management Framework, which is another document that all of government really is looking to help shape best practices in this area. It will also include the mapping that I mentioned of work roles to methodologies and activities that we would like to see the DoD engaged in. And then it will include pointers to the excellent work from my sister organization, Test and Evaluation within CDAO. So those are the things that we've been working hard on in the last year. And then our intent is that in putting out these tools and best practices for the community to adopt, we also intend to gather feedback on how well those tools are working, where are the gaps that will help us to refine, and the things that are working very well, then we can start to turn those into standards. We're at kind of a funny place in the evolution of responsible AI too, because the science and technology is still evolving, and it's hard to make a standard to something that you're still discovering. So that's one of the aspects of this work that is sort of on being on the cutting edge is difficult to manage, because there's this intent to go right to standards, and we're not quite there yet.
Well, I agree. We're definitely on the cutting edge, and it's hard because we always feel like we're trying to catch up. Under the umbrella, I'm going to just try to pull the thread a little bit more in terms of to maintain our military advantage in this digitally competitive world. How has DoD embraced our AI technologies to kind of try to keep pace with the evolving threat? And if there's anything that you can share about the approach to developing responsible AI pathways so that we can be part of the solution going forward.
No, that certainly. I will talk a little bit just more broadly about what CDAO is doing. Certainly, and I think the Air Force agrees with this, that data is one of the most important advantages that we have, and being able to unlock the potential of data, making data available among all of the organizations that need to consume it has been one of the efforts that CDAO has put a lot of time and energy into, in trying to build out a federated data catalog, making sure that the data is well labeled, is well cleansed, free of unintended bias. That's one of the advantages that we have, so that we can more quickly build analytics and AI solutions on top of that. So that's one area where CDAO on the DoD side has been working very hard. One of the tensions that I often hear about, and this is often a question that I get in coming out to events like these, is that generally there's an impression that being responsible means rules and regulations, and that it's going to slow down the development process and impose all this extra burden. I wanted to flip that impression on the side a little bit. Being responsible is also an opportunity for us to innovate, right? Constraint is often viewed in the design community as an enabler, right? If you often can think of more creative solutions if there's something that you have to ideate around. And we don't often take opportunities in our programs to think of things in that way. We're working so hard to build, but we want to be able to have these moments to reflect and see what we can do more creatively, that being responsible could help us think through.
I love the fact that you talk about opportunities, because a lot of times in our data community, in the Department of the Air Force, we're talking about how to get to yes, because everybody says no from the beginning. But how do we get to yes safely, securely? So, and how to make sure that we get that data right. And there's been a lot of conversation recently about equity and inclusion. We've seen new guidance come out at the federal level. So as the DoD Chief of Responsible AI, how is the CDAO at the OSD level preparing or operating to use AI without bias, to reduce errors? We know that it's never going to be perfect, but how do we help be part of that solution and help get to yes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So certainly, I want to be a little bit careful about bias because there are in cases in a DoD or national security context where bias can be useful, right? If there is something specifically that we're looking for, we may want to have that bias built in. We've been talking about it in the sense of either removing unwanted bias or unintended bias, or characterizing the bias, so at least you know where those biases might lie in your data set. So we have just completed a study looking at commercial tools that provide, among other things in their platforms, tools for assessing the biases present in your data set, as well as being able to characterize and conduct experiments on those data sets to see what kinds of techniques might be more effective at mitigating those biases. And we are about to embark on a series of short pilots with those vendors to be able to make some recommendations about what should be included in our tech stacks and have those solutions be available to the department more broadly so that other platforms or other developers can be able to utilize them. So that's on the bias front. That's one of the efforts that we have underway. And then as far as free of errors, I will again give a shout out to my sister organization, Test and Evaluation. They are working on a joint test capability, which again will include some tools aimed at data bias, but it's also looking at performance, robustness, resilience more broadly, and being able to make those tools available to the department as well as some of that infrastructure. So we have efforts underway on all of those fronts to be able to provide those capabilities and have them available to the folks that need them.
So I love the fact that you talk about unintended or unwanted bias. But we do have some skeptics out there. And so I'm going to ask, like, how do we create that sense of safety with our DoD colleagues to make sure that we're all working together, making sure that we're individually accountable for responsible AI, not just corporately responsible?
Oh, that's a great question. And certainly that's one of the aspects that's hardest, right? Is that this is, a cultural sea change for the department, and everyone has a role to play. But it's not fair of us to ask everyone to be responsible if we don't tell them exactly how and why and when, and give them the tools to be able to do it. So again, what we need to be defining, what our team is working on, is defining what that looks like. So being specific about what we want people to do, being specific about how their job changes. Are there things that we can build into performance assessments to be able to help drive the behaviors that we want to see? In some cases, it's going to be building out the training, to give folks the ability, the technical capabilities, the awareness across the board on what the ethical principles are, give them the knowledge for their specific role of what they need to know to be responsible. This will be true. Right now, we're working on educational curriculum for machine learning developers, data scientists, responsible AI practitioners. We will get to the point of having more specific training for senior leaders and a more broad awareness training for the whole department. So that's all underway now. We expect our first curriculum to launch in June and have a resource list available to folks. So that's one mechanism that we have to drive that cultural change.
Well, I appreciate this, and I may be a little bit proactive, but if you need some beta testers, I think we have a big community that what I love about this community is that every single time we ask for a volunteer, we get one, which is I started my leadership journey in the Army, and you didn't get encouraged to volunteer, but these are really impactful opportunities. So I will open, like, any way we can help you move the needle faster in that area. please do not hesitate to ask. We're one. I always say one team, one fight, and data is team sport. So, so with that, we always have some of those skeptics that say we shouldn't be doing this. Our airman and guardian, we're replacing our workforce. This isn't, this isn't a right fit for me. What kind of guidance can you give some of our colleagues out there when I would say, navigate the land of no?
No, that's a great question. And so first of all, thank you for your kind offer of volunteers. Certainly, I will take any volunteers I can get. So thank you for that. No, I do have a fair amount of skepticism. And regarding the workforce, certainly that's a real concern. Right? Nobody wants to see their job taken away. There's a couple of things I would highlight there. First of all, in the department, we do have a fairly large work queue. Certainly, I was at an event back in October, and the commander of SOCOM got up in front of the audience and said, "Hey, we don't have enough people to do the work we need to do today." So certainly, we expect AI to be a force multiplier first for some of those jobs that we don't have enough resources for before we start thinking about replacing any jobs. So that is one of the things that we're thinking about there. What are the jobs that we need more people to do, and let's automate those. Second, AI still isn't mature necessarily enough to the point where we can deploy it wholesale and not have anybody watching it. So there are still many areas where human judgment and oversight will be required for a long time, if not indefinitely, just because either those mission areas are so sensitive that we would expect that humans would be using AI as an assistant or an augmenter or a force multiplier, not necessarily as a replacer. And finally, I would highlight that AI is also creating new jobs and new opportunities. So the DoD has recently just released a whole new set of work roles that are in the process of being defined. In the requirements, knowledge, skills, and abilities are being refined. These include things like, as you would expect, developers, data scientists, but also things like AI innovation experts, things like AI ethics and risk specialists. Those jobs didn't exist in the DoD, up till a couple months ago. So there will be many new jobs and new work roles and upskilling opportunities that get created by the employment of AI. And again, this is probably a longer term, longer term horizon that we're thinking about these jobs. And it's on the onus is also on us to recognize, if there are jobs that are potentially impacted, to recognize when that's happening and make sure that we take care of our people, we upskill our people, or help define what their new jobs look like.
I love that. And we have a ton of data people on the line. And one of the questions that I have to pick up from the chat right now is from Eric, and he's asking about, we're looking for your guidance on data management and data governance, because 80+% of AI work begins with really awesome data. It's not enough to have volumes, but you have to have high quality data. And so are there some tips that you want to give our community to help be part of the solution in that area?
Okay, so that's a great question. Certainly, the management of data isn't something that's being done within my specific team. It is being done more broadly in the DoD CDAO context. And quite honestly, our team is going through these same exercises, right? We're all looking at if your data set maybe was acquired for a specific purpose, how do you now anticipate all the use cases that it might be used for? How do you create a labeling taxonomy that makes sense, or makes sense given all the potential future uses for it? How do you document that data source so that others can consume it for different purposes? I neglected to mention this earlier, but I neglected to mention that we are working on a data and model card best practices template that will be released as part of our toolkit in June. So you can see, and we start to get at that. It's probably, I would characterize it as the alpha version. But we started to think through what are the different consumers of this data set, and what would they need to know about the source? How was it acquired? Who has the rights to it? What biases or limitations may exist, so that anyone down the line has it documented. So that's one effort that we've been involved with, and helping to steer some of those efforts a bit. But it is a huge challenge, as you may have pointed out.
Well, I'm going to ask Colonel Kehoe. We have like so many questions in the chat, and they're like, I don't even know how you pick which one, because there's so many, and a lot of them are awesome. So I'm going to ask Colonel Kehoe if he can help us with that and maybe pick one.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. We have quite a few questions, very insightful questions. So we'll make it through as many as we can with the time that we have left. So the first question is from Mr. Chuck DeStefani. He says, if you had to give out a gold, silver, and bronze medal for AI initiatives or programs happening under your purview, can you share what those shining examples might be?
Okay, so shining examples of sort of responsible AI initiatives.
Well, he says AI initiatives overall, but I think both RAI and AI would be fair game.
Okay. Well, I think I'll start out at least with my shining stars in the RAI realm. Certainly, through the Responsible AI Working Council, we have interactions with various teams that across the department that are engaged in getting their teams stood up and getting their processes together. So I think I'll acknowledge three of my star performers there. The Air Force, the Army, and DIU, I think, have been really the backbone on providing the subject matter expertise for us. DIU, kind of working backwards, has been engaged in this field for a long time, and has been proactive in putting out their guidance, sharing their case studies, sharing their lessons learned, and they've been able to do an enormous amount with a small team. The Army also has been getting their team together. They're co-located with the AI Integration Center at Carnegie Mellon. They've been kind of boots on the ground, working with the programs, helping them to be responsible, taking their lessons learned and rolling that back into their policy and their procedures. And they've been passionate and moving the ball forward there. And then, of course, the Air Force team, certainly the folks that I work with, Lieutenant Colonel Chapa in the Air Force CDAO, and the folks at the Pentagon and A5 have been great in working through their taskers for the Responsible AI Strategy and Implementation pathway. They've been asking a lot of great questions. They've gotten a broader team engaged in this work, and they're working to drive policy and be out ahead with getting some of the tasks off their list. So those are the folks that have been really the ones that have been making a difference in this space. So I thank all of you for that.
Well, thank you for the shout out. I know Colonel Chapa and team have been working hard on getting after the LOEs from the implementation pathways, 60, I believe, overall. And right now we've identified 30 as our highest priorities. They're all obviously high priorities, but those are the first 31, I believe, that we're trying to get after right now. Okay, this next question is from Major Bernard Tumachong. He says, how do you ensure that AI systems are explainable and interpretable, particularly when they're making autonomous decisions that impact people's lives? How do you balance the potential benefits of AI with the potential risks, such as bias and discrimination? So kind of a two-part question with explainable and interpretable, kind of tying to one of the DoD tenets of traceable. So I'll let you answer the first part, and then I'll reread the second part if you'd like. Over.
Great. No, great question. Lots in there. So certainly when we're talking about our AI ethical principle, we're not necessarily only thinking about the system itself. We want to be traceable in really all aspects of development, which includes documenting the data, documenting the process by which the system was developed, documenting user requirements, documenting the performance metrics. So there's a paper trail for how the system was built. We're also thinking about traceable from the perspective of if something goes wrong, making sure there's logging and monitoring, and you know what the system status was at the time when a decision was made based on that system. So we're thinking about traceability maybe in a little bit of a broader context than just the system itself. So getting back to the question, the intent of the question at least, how do you make sure that some of these systems are explainable? I would ask the question back on what kind of explainability do we need? Are we looking at explainability back to the machine learning developers so that they know they can diagnose or debug system problems? Are we thinking about explainability for an end user who's using that system in a mission context and needs to have sort of a higher level decision that the system made explained to them? I think those two things are very different things. And there's been, at least in the research, there's been a lot more emphasis on the explainability as far as the model itself. And we're certainly working with some of the researchers in that area to transition those capabilities and those lessons learned over into the department and scale them out more broadly. Again, my sister organization, Test and Evaluation, has been working with DARPA's Explainable AI program to bring in some of the good work that's happened under that program and transition that into our office so that it can be used more broadly, at least under our efforts, and be able to, again, make that tool available to the broader department. I would say there's still more work to be done on the user interface aspect. That's an area where we're still trying to better understand how do users interact with AI systems and the human-machine teaming aspects. That's a pretty hard area. But my team is standing up some studies over the next year to start to better look at that and better come up with frameworks and techniques to be able to bridge that gap.
Okay, this next question is from Major Bernard Tamajong again. He has some very insightful questions. He says, what are some examples of departments or units that are leading the way in responsible AI implementation, and what can be learned from them?
Yeah, so I highlighted some of the organizations that are really leading the way. Certainly, I will say that there are also organizations in industry as well that we can draw lessons learned from, right? So, as well as organizations within the intelligence community. Certainly, one of the most critical elements that I take away from some of the companies that I've talked to, as well as have seen demonstrations from, is being able to surface metrics and being able to have real quantitative measurement is something that we're working towards. Starting out with maybe qualitative metrics and figuring out how to turn those into quantitative metrics, but looking at how well are your programs doing, what behaviors are your programs or what activities are your programs engaging in, and knowing where your risk is something that I see being done well on the industry side, and it's something that we have more opportunity to implement and to engage with. So more to come on that front also. But that's one of the takeaways that I have, at least from having engaged on the industry front.
Okay, thank you. This next question is from Wesley Lake. He's asking, what is the best way to connect with CDAO about participating in the pilots that you mentioned earlier? Are they referenced via BAAs?
So for right now, you should send me an email and I will put my email in the chat. We will have a conversation with you. I'm typing my email now, so you have it.
Okay, the next question is, while you're typing, I'll let you finish typing so you're not
Okay. You can only do
multitasking.
one thing at a time here.
Yeah, these are great questions, so you want to be able to hear.
All right.
Okay. All right. So this next question is from Tony Burris. Great conversation on this critical point. You've referenced the test and eval acquisition vehicle. We've seen little activity at the task order level on T&E and a companion DRAID, D-R-A-I-D. I'm not familiar with that acronym myself. Do you expect activity to pick up, or are there still barriers to overcome?
On the T&E front, so I would probably defer those questions to our Chief of T&E, John Elliott. I know that he has been actively soliciting vendors, and I'm not quite sure where it stands right now. So I'm happy to connect you with him to answer that question offline. But I will say that it is something that we're still actively engaged with building, and we definitely want to connect with folks on.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Major Tomachong. How do you ensure AI systems are secure and protected against potential cyber threats?
That's a great question. So we do actively engage with some of our peers in the cybersecurity community. There's a well-established program for the defense industrial base on cybersecurity, and some of those folks have started to pivot to the AI realm and share information back and forth. What a lot of the discussions that are happening in those communities are more around what are the attacks that are being seen that are unique to AI systems versus just general cybersecurity kinds of concerns. There's MITRE in particular has been an organization that has been trying to spearhead some of those discussions and has been a leader in that space. So it's still an area that needs additional attention and work for sure.
Yes, the importance of protecting the models and the data, the training data, which trains them. So, okay, this next question is from Christopher Allen. As an emerging field, how is DISA ensuring the growth of AI codes, repository architectures, testing methods, and utilization are all shared with a reciprocity across the military departments? Is there an effort to, quote, start together instead of racing to utilization in stovepipes?
No, that's a great question, and
Yes,
certainly,
absolutely.
yeah, one of the roles of CDAO is just to try to break down those barriers and trying to reduce those stovepipes. At least, I will talk a bit about at least what we are trying to do from an RAI perspective on breaking down some of those barriers. Certainly, one of the challenges that we have is being able to know what other people are working on, what other people are doing. So we have a number of lines of effort in the responsible AI strategy and implementation pathway aimed at developing repositories of all different sorts. And I think this harkens back to the previous question as well. We have a line of effort to develop a use case repository so that we can capture the common use cases and hopefully start to develop common solutions or solutions that can be customized and tailored for particular solutions. So that's something that we're currently working on developing a schema for what goes into that use case repository, with the intent that someone as program manager or someone working in mission that needs a solution, they can come to that use case repository, and connect with the teams that are already working in those areas to facilitate reuse of those kinds of components. We have a line of effort on an incident repository or a common failure mode repository, so that we know if something doesn't work or something bad happens. We have documentation of what happened. We have the remediations, mitigations, et cetera, put into place, and we can have the technical details available, so that either others have experiencing the same problems can learn from it, or there's at least documentation that something happened. And there are a number of other lines of effort along similar lines, but sharing out that information more broadly is one of the first steps that at least our team is engaged with.
Yes, Mr. Allen hit on the very essence of our FY25 POM bill, is how we ensure that we have those enterprise level capabilities for repositories that we can corral tested and evaluated and embedded capabilities so that we can build once and use many instead of everybody developing in silos. So definitely a tough challenge and one we're trying to get after with guidance from DoD, CDAO. So this next question is very specific, but at the same time addresses the larger discussion. Now that we are dancing with large language models and generative AI as a whole, vendors are coming out of the woodwork to offer capabilities to the Department of Defense. So this particular question says, Amazon recently released, or Amazon Web Services recently released Bedrock, which are for some foundational models with the ability to, quote, privately customize functional models using your organization's data. Is that on your radar?
It's not on my radar personally, but I'm happy to learn more about it.
Right. Yeah, I think lots of vendor offerings are coming in on a daily basis, and it's important to know that anything that you intend to use, if you are doing utilizing data that is CUI or higher, needs to be on the network, and if it's on the network, it needs to be ATO'd. So it's not a quick turn process. So.
This may also be a good point to mention our Tradewinds marketplace, which is one of the CDAO solutions that we have for being able to engage with industry. So the website is tradewindai.com. There are a number of different opportunities that are posted there, everything from test and evaluation to data, AI expertise. Certainly we had TryAI is what we're using for sourcing some of our demos. So I would encourage folks to go there and sign up to figure out what the opportunities are to engage with us. And vendors can submit information, white papers about their products, which is a good way for those products to be put on our radar. So I will, again, put that into the chat for everyone so that they have it.
Thank you. I was just about to ask you to confirm the link. I heard tradewindai.gov.
.com.
Got it. Oh, .com. Okay. Have a great opportunity to help synergize all the different offerings that come in. Okay, and this last one isn't necessarily a question, but a comment. A good resource would be the NIST AI Resource Center for Responsible AI Framework, Lexicon, Testing, etc. And Major Hagberg provided a link to the NIST knowledge base. I think that was just released here in 2023. I wouldn't be able to confirm though.
Yes, so the folks at NIST are great. A lot of work from a lot of organizations went into the AI risk management framework, and we're definitely working with them. I know the creators personally; they're wonderful people. Very much encourage you to visit that website for resources. Happy to support their efforts.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think that we've actually hit all the questions. We had quite a few. Thank you for being champion and championing all those that came in. And before I close up, ma'am, I would like to offer you any, or Ms. Vidrine, any final comments? Over.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today. Great questions. I love it when I go and come to these events and hear what everyone is top of mind for everyone. And it certainly helps me, get a pulse on the community too. So thank you all for your comments and engagement today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for coming to Innovation Connect today. It's all about connections. And so I think today we learned many, and we always get a unique nugget. And the fact that you're coming into us through the IPA program is, I think, a really important nugget for hiring officials out there, that are trying to bring great talent in at the speed of mission. So we always find a hidden gem. So I'm pretty excited about and truly grateful. I will also remind folks that she will be joining us at the DAF later this month, out in the Dulles area. So we're looking forward to that and continuing the conversation. So thank you for coming, and thank you for your continued leadership in the area. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for all your great questions as well. It's a pleasure chatting with you.
Okay,
Colonel
so
Keith, back to you.
yes, ma'am. So with that, I would like to close today's session by thanking our guest, Ms. Staheli, for joining us today. Your time to offer your insights and perspectives to our audience are greatly appreciated. I'd also like to thank all those in attendance for taking time out of your schedules to join today's program. With the support of our DoD innovators, Innovation Connect has become a success, and we look forward to spotlighting more innovative projects in the future. Moreover, I'd also like to personally thank Ty, Brooke, and Lindsay for their dedicated work behind the scenes before, during, and after each session. You truly make the Innovation Connect a success each and every month. And finally, approved videos of our Innovation Connect events are available on our DAF CDAO YouTube page, once approved by PA. And we'd also like you to follow us on LinkedIn and our Twitter accounts for future events and registration information. And that concludes today's Innovation Connect. If you have a future topic, please send your recommendations to our communications mailbox, and our team will review your proposal. Our next Innovation Connect is slated for 11 May with a special presentation from Mr. Robert Guerrero, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Operational Energy. Thank you again for participating, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. Out here.